first things first, my name is Cydney Gillon. I started competing way back, way back. I was a freshman in high school. So I started training for competitions at 13. At the same time, I was doing basketball, cheerleading, track, dance, and everything else too. And I added bodybuilding on top because my parents were bodybuilders. So they started way back when I was about 6 years old. They were just doing like a Bill Phillips for life weight loss journey. And so that's when I started seeing them because they were pretty unhealthy. And so I looked at it and I saw kind of them changing and changing. And I said, hey, I want to do that too. It really all started with like rhinestones. It sounds super superficial, but that's what I cared about at the time. I was freaking sick. So I looked, I said, Mom, I want to do that. And they all had, that's when Figure first came out. That was back in 2002. It was brand new. And I saw the rhinestones and the heels and I said, I want to do that. So my mom thought I was joking because I was super unhealthy. I drank nothing but sweet tea and Coke all day long. Every day. You wouldn't see me with water. You wouldn't see me. I like veggies if they were collard greens and cooked right, but that was pretty much it. So my mom was like, "No, you're not serious." And then she realized I was serious, and then now we're here. But it all started back then, and it's been just a crazy journey just to see kind of how far I come from just one random dream that I just in one random decision that I kind of made, and then got here.
It's funny you mentioned the sweet tea and Coke, and I'm from Kentucky, so kind of the South as
Uh-huh.
well. And I remember
Yeah.
just growing up drinking so much sweet tea,
Yes.
and you
Yes.
don't understand, like, okay, it's sweet tea. It's like it's as good as water in the South, you know. So one year for Lent though, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna cut this out just to see. And I cut out sweet tea and I cut out Coke and stuff like the Coke kind of
Yeah.
products. And it's weird that you say that because I've never kind of like put the two together in my life, but that was kind of like the beginning almost of my thoughtfulness on like, what am I putting in my body? What is it doing to my body? I always was an active kid and
The main thing that really started me, besides like the rhinestones and everything, was by the time I was 12, I had high cholesterol. So the doctor started me in a sense. It was like I was like, okay. I went and had my blood drawn, everything. And then they were like, her cholesterol is extremely high. And they were like, she either gets put on medicine or she changed her diet. And I was like, my mom was like, I'm not paying for the medicine. So we'll change her diet and she get together. And that is almost what kind of at the same time with the rhinestones jump started my health journey. Because like you said, we were both super active. Nobody could tell, but my insides, terrible. They were terrible. I had sodium migraines, everything. Like they would put me to sleep. It was just really bad because I ate so much sodium. I was so dehydrated constantly. And then you work it out for 3 and 4 hours a day in all these different sports. So that's technically probably what mixed with my rhinestones, what started me out.
and whenever you started to have this idea of like, you know what, maybe I'm interested in this world of bodybuilding,
Mm-hmm.
and back in the day, like today, it's much more
Much
prevalent
more
on social
common.
media. It's
Mm-hmm.
more a popular thing to do. But back then, it was
Mm-hmm.
much more underground. It was much more,
Very much.
I don't want to say looked down upon, but in some ways, I think it was looked down upon more.
It was especially for women.
So how,
It's
especially being a kid, how did you like what were the other kids thinking or saying, or what were you hearing of like, oh, Sydney's doing this new weird thing?
right. Well, for me, I was kind of fortunate because I was like the head jock everywhere. So it really nobody was gonna tell me anything. It was like okay, but I always had arms. I always said this. I popped up the womb with muscle, so it wasn't anything new. They always knew I was muscular. I just kept getting bigger and bigger, and so they were like, "Oh, this is pretty cool, pretty cool." So like even when I was running for homecoming queen, all the little freshmen, the little babies, they were like, "Oh, the bodybuilder girl." And then they would vote for me. I was like, so it ended up working out, but I think it's all in your like I always said, people, before you get into this sport, you have to know who you are. You have to be secure in who you are. And I've known who I was since I was 12, really since I was 10 years old. So at no point in time could you bully me. I can't be bullied because you're not allowed to bully me. You're not allowed to talk about me negatively and then impact me. So I took that and that helped me kind of master that because it's like even if you have something negative to say about it, you weren't gonna say it to my face, thus it was not said.
Yeah.
So and I carry that as an adult and move forward through it. But they were after they realized that it wasn't like a fluke and I was really serious and I was good at it, everybody was behind me, my teachers, everything. Because they knew how unhealthy I was because I was the hot Cheeto lady. I sold candy, I sold Capri Suns. I sold everything. I sold everything during class. So they knew how unhealthy I was and how I was kind of infiltrating the rest of the school. But that kind of, it made it easy because I knew who I was. And that's really rare at a young age anyway, especially for young women. You weren't allowed to make it a negative thing. Like, this is what I'm going to do. I know this is what I'm going to do. I know I can be good at this. And I stuck with it.
It's funny you hear about like adults doing bodybuilding. They'll have like an extra job or something to pay for, all of the expenses. And you had, I guess, your hustle, you
Yep.
had your grind. It's kind of
Yeah, that's
funny.
right. That's right. My mom was my first investor. She was like, "Am I gonna get my money back?" I said, "No, ma'am, you're my mama."
Exactly.
So,
But the
like,
return on investment is the smile on my face. That's,
that's right, exactly. And
that's
you not
funny.
having to buy my food because you know how parents are like, if you buy it, you can get it. I said, say less. I'm about to buy it because I'm just gonna work for it and I'm gonna buy whatever I want. So that in turn led to my high cholesterol because I was buying everything I wanted. So you couldn't tell me anything. So if I got an option to go to McDonald's, I'm gonna walk up the street and go to McDonald's.
So your parents kind of getting into their own health journey at that point, how did they shape like your knowledge? How did they shape what you did in those early days? Because everybody's early days, it's kind of more of like an experimental thing, seeing what works.
Absolutely. Well, they were my first training partners. My mom took me to the gym for the first time. Well, I technically was raised in the gym because when they started training, we would always be like the little kids in the little kids club, and then we would come out after. And so my mom, she was training one of my teachers, and I was about 10 at the YMCA, and then that's when I did my first lat pull down, and she was like, "Hmm." She realized how strong I was at that point. But even before training, in PE you have pull up competitions. Well, they called them chin ups at the time. You had all those competitions. I would always win those. So it was like, okay, we knew I had a good base. And then once she saw me lift for the first time, that's when she was like, okay. And then when I decided to compete, that's when my daddy still didn't believe me. My mom believed me first. And so she let me train with her and she taught me all of my form, my techniques, and just generally how to lift. And then my dad came in and gave his touch on it. And he would spot me as I got stronger and stronger. And then kind of by the time I was a junior in high school, I moved to France for a little bit with my friends to study abroad. And that's when I started developing my own techniques based off what they taught me in the past. But they all started with my foundation and my training. And then general nutrition. But back then, it was very much not what it is today. There was no such thing as peak week and all these other terms that didn't exist when I started. There was barely a camera phone when I started competing. So it's interesting to see kind of where it is now. But back then, they would give me like these old school diets back when I was doing freaking tilapia and grapefruit for every single meal. I was, it was terrible. I had a tilapia version for like 3 years. I was like, I don't want to see it again. But it was basically very, very old school. But what it did was, and cheat meals didn't exist either. What it did was it built my foundation for what I'm able to do now. Because for the first 10 years of my career, I had no cheat meals. It was all out, extremely, extremely extreme dieting. And now it makes my life way easier with the new style of prepping.
Back in the day, those fitness tests and you had to run the
Yes.
mile or whatever. You had to do
Yep.
the
Yep.
the the,
Yep.
the sit and reach stuff, the pull
Yep.
ups. Man, those
Yep.
things, the pull up was always the one that was like, this is the one where you like see who the strong kids in class are. This is the one,
That's
you
right.
always like you because everybody like could physically walk or run the mile. They could physically,
Exactly.
reach. That was the one where it was like, if you get up there, everybody's watching. You better be able at least to do something when you get on that bar.
That's right. That's right.
So moving into kind of a little bit later in your life, you mentioned that junior year. When you got into college, you ran track in college.
That's correct.
So how did the bodybuilding training go over with, training for track? Those two were kind of different. So how did that work out?
They don't go together at all. They really don't. And I was really trying to make it work. Um, so freshman year, they by that time I already had a pro card in another organization. So my coach already kind of knew that I was more so serious about this. I had a different coach my freshman and sophomore year. So she kind of, and then as the newbies on the block, they're not really paying as much attention to you anyway. So I was able to kind of multitask a little bit better. But by the time I got to junior year, that's when I was going for my IFBB pro card at nationals back when it was in Atlanta. And at that time, like the whole school already knew. They already knew kind of just how I went about everything. That's when I was very much a more is better type of person. So I was doing 3 a days. So I would get up in the morning, go to class, go to work, go to practice, go to track lift, go back to work. Well, I had two jobs. Go back to work, and then I would go back to the gym, and then I would go to sleep, and then wake up and rinse and repeat. So I would do that over and over again. At that time too, back when I was still doing like the very much strict dieting, my mom was like, "Okay, well, you need some carbs." I said, "Okay, so how much should I eat?" Mind you, I never had a scale. I didn't weigh myself. I didn't weigh my food my entire career until I got my IBB Pro card.
That's cool.
So she was like, "Okay, well, just eat a sweet potato before practice." So I would have one sweet potato a day before 4 hours of practice. When I tell you, it was tearing me up. It was tearing me up. My coach was like, it was a point where, because it's been, we're PM relays is held. So we were in Franklin Field and we were running the stadium. So you're going up and down the stadium, the entire stadium where 50,000 plus people are being held. She literally had to put her hand on my back to literally push me. I was giving it all I got. I'm not going to punk out. I was giving it all I had, but she knew I had nothing in the tank. I literally had nothing. And so she pushed me all the way around. So they don't go together, but I had my coach. She was very, very supportive of me getting my pro card. She looked at me before, after that practice. She was like, "You better win." And then I won. So she was like, "Okay." But then as soon as I won, she was like, "Listen, I need you to dedicate these next years to track." She said, "This bodybuilding is cool and all. That's great. Will you do that in the future?" She said, "But I know you can be better at this sport. So I need you to focus on this sport." Because they don't go together in terms of dieting wise at the time. Now, if I dieted how I do now, I would have been fine because I eat carbs. I can lose weight doing eating everything and kind of being more functional in terms of my dieting and having the cheat meals. But back then, it did that style did not go together with track practice.
Yeah. It's amazing like what you can do when you don't know, like sometimes ignorance is like it truly is bliss, but it's also like this experience
Absolutely.
of, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that, so I just did it. And
That's right.
you know, the more you learn, the better you're equipped to do things in a more optimal way, of course. But like sometimes it's just about like putting your head down and doing it, and
That's
not
right.
worrying about is this scientifical, or is this, you
Right.
know, is this all these other things that we know? Like
Right.
sometimes you just do things, and you don't know how you did it and you don't know why you did it, but it just worked out. And
I'm telling you. Because I look back and I'm like, I don't know if I can do that again, but I made it through. So I probably could do it again, but it took some serious mental fortitude. So I'm grateful for it. I wouldn't change that for anything in the world. It definitely built and helped build the person I am today.
yeah, for sure. So something that I find very interesting is your experience on the show Survivor. I'm a big fan of the show. I actually didn't know you were on until very, very recently. I'm a person who like didn't watch it until very recently.
Yeah.
But I just think it's like such an interesting aspect because of your psychology background.
Mhm.
And you know, tell us a little bit about, like, I'm just so interested in how the human experience can be broken down into it can be broken down into like a competition, because at the end of the day, you can look at that as a show, and it is a show, and there's aspects of it that are the show, but at the same time it's like we're all doing this within, you know, our own lives, hopefully not to some of the extremes, but we're all doing these
Right.
things, and it just gives you this opportunity to look at it and be like, you know, these are the people that are in your world. You have these kind of people, you have these kind of people. How do you interact with those people? How do you benefit from the people who maybe you don't want to benefit from, you don't ever
That's
want to be
right.
around, but you have to be anyway? Um,
Yep.
First of all, like, did you ever, did you really think like you'd be on the show? Like everybody, there's tons of people who submit stuff.
When I tell you it was so random, it was really a fluke. So I was getting ready for my first Olympia. And mind you, give you backstory. I didn't know how to swim at the time. I did not like going outside at all unless it was a track practice. I didn't like being in the sun. I didn't like being overly hot. It was so many things. I didn't like bugs, a list. So I'm sitting there, I'm getting ready for my first Olympia. And this back when, again, old school dieting, old school cardio. I was partying my life away. And I said, I need something to watch while I'm watching TV. So that was back in, what was that? There was a site. It was one of, well, was it illegal? I don't know. Anyway, one of those sites you could watch the old shows back on before they had like Hulu and Netflix and streaming in general. Wow, I'm dating myself. Okay, but yeah, before they had all that stuff. So I was going back. I said, "Oh, let's just watch Survivor." So I started watching them backwards, and then I got addicted. So I was watching them back. Like in the latest season, I think it was like season 29. I would watch it back and back and back. And I said, "Huh." I think I could do this. Anyway, I'm just talking to myself. And then I go to bed. I wake up randomly at like 3 a.m. I used to sleep with the TV on. I had a lot of unhealthy practices. I used to sleep with the TV on. And so when I woke up, this literally right after I said I can do this, there was a casting call that popped up on the TV screen. I kid you not. The most random fluky thing. My life is very much like this, though. It's very much things just kind of like fall into my face and like, hey, you either pick if you want to do this or you don't. So I said, Mom, I said, there's a casting call in Woodstock. Can we go? And she was like, you can't swim. You don't like bugs. You don't like being outside. I said, that's besides the point. I can do this though. So we went to the casting call. The line was long. And I said, what's going on? Mind you, I didn't really know anything about the show. I didn't really watch it for real. So I'm sitting here winging. I was like, well, I survive every day. This is what I do. I know how to deal with people, blah, 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 blah. I'm hyping myself up, ready to go. So I get in there, kill my interview, and all the producers came outside. They're like, "You were amazing." I was like, "I just was talking." So I was like, "Okay, well maybe I can do this for real." And then that's when I got my first call back. And then next thing you know, I was being flown to LA, and next thing you know, I was casted. I said, "Well, that was quick," but it literally was just me being myself. That's it. I was just talking to them about how, because the thing is, they like competitive people, and I eat, sleep, and breathe competition every single day. I always tell my husband and all my friends, life is competition. They're like, oh, it's nothing serious. No, yes, it is. Life is a competition. You can get played with if you want to. It's not gonna be me. So, and that's when it all took off. It was to the point where I was so clueless. That's what you said. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. I was so clueless as to what was happening. I was clueless as to I was being casted. I was even clueless when the game started. I was like, what is happening? I'm just here. I was very present though. But I was like, this is just, it's really all happening. But it was one of the best experiences. Now who they casted me with? I had to get my bearings on that one. I said, y'all are crazy. Okay, y'all got, I mean, it was entertaining, but I was entertained myself. I said, I should not be entertained. I'm trying to play a game and y'all entertain the hell out of me. But it was just so much, but I knew that I would be good at it because of just what I have to do daily in life. So I was like, this is just a regular skill set that I've already had to master, put it into the game. And we always say that Survivor is a microcosm for life. So we know you're going to be dealing with all these different types of people. Like you said, there's different people who you want to deal with, people who you don't need to talk to, who you want to talk to, you have to talk to a certain kind of way. It's literally just life. So if you're good at doing life and networking and really creating relationships, Survivor is the game for you.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com.
How much do you know, like, going in?
For me, I didn't know anything because I wasn't a super fan. Now, I found out I didn't even know what country we were going to. And all the super fans, I think, because we weren't technically allowed to talk, but one of them had mentioned, oh, yeah, something about Phnom Penh. I said, what the was that? I'm looking like, didn't learn about that in Georgia history. like, I don't know what's happening. And so I'm sitting here trying to piece together, as we're flying into China, I'm literally like, my sister, she's lived in China for like 4 or 5 years. I said, oh, this sounds like a country that she's familiar with. I said, I think, okay. I said, are we going to China? I said, I don't think Phnom Penh's in China, though. Then we get on another 10-hour flight. And I'm looking like, when I tell you, I'm so perplexed. I'm just sitting quietly, because I'm not allowed to talk, sitting quietly, wondering where I'm being shipped off to. I have no idea about anything. And then we pull up to the airport, and I still didn't know anything because I couldn't read anything. And I'm looking like, I don't know what's happening. So eventually somebody said where we were, and I kind of saw some like word written in English. And that's when I figured out where I was. But that was literally once I was there.
It's almost in a small way like you're kind of being kidnapped and just like, here's what, the situation is.
That's what it was. I said, well, I don't know what's happening. I saw these people real. I don't know if this is legit. What's happening? But it was so crazy because if you think about it, they don't want the game to be played when the cameras aren't rolling. So you're not allowed to talk.
I kind of actually did the opposite of you. I watched from the beginning moving forward. Mm-hmm. But something that I noticed is that the game is very similar from season to season as far as like how it is played, like some of the tactics, things like that between people. Mm-hmm. Is that just human nature, or is that something like, people just see so they replicate, or is it like, hey guys, this is kind of the best way to do it? Like why is it so similar?
It's a mix of all three. So certain people are just shady. Certain people don't know how to lie. Certain people are great liars. Certain people don't choose to lie at all, even if they could. And then you have people who just don't know how to play the game at all, who talk too much and do just are really themselves and shouldn't be. But again, it's like people who are just not self-aware. So you're gonna have a lot of those people like that. And so what it is certain seasons, like in the beginning, it was a little bit less cutthroat. And then by the time my season was airing, that's when we got like kind of blindside crazy. And then now they forced the game to change because they shortened it in the last, probably the last 4 or 5 seasons, I think it is. They shortened the game and they added in all these twists right after my season. So in my season, I don't want to spoil it for the end. However it ended, they now made that a staple in the game, so that what happened to me never happens again.
Gotcha.
Because I'm like, y'all didn't have that when I was on there, and I could have been good. But anyway, but I think it's pretty much that. But what I do is, even when I'm watching the seasons back now just for fun, it's never just for fun. I'm studying. So I'm seeing how they're moving just in case I have to play with them in the future. And seeing what they do, what their tactic is, kind of what their tellers are. It's like playing poker. You just watch and study people. So it's never just like, oh, let me just relax and have fun playing the game. Like, no, they made a decision. What would I have done? And you kind of just play the game as if you were in the game with as much information you can. But the thing is, even when you're watching it back, you're missing so much information. We are filmed 24/7. There's a lot of background stuff that is not shown on the TV.
Yeah.
So it's about really strategizing. But yeah, I think it's a lot of, you see what works, you try to implement it for yourself, and then you move from there. So it's you're going to have some people pick up different moves that were made, and then you're going to have some people try to just copy, and then you're going to have some people who are just like that.
I thought it was interesting. You know, like you said, you only get to see certain things. Just, you know, how what you do see influences, you know, the viewer as far as like, oh, I do or I don't like these people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how much of that, like, if you go rewatch your season, how much of that is like, oh, that's weird. I didn't necessarily see it like that, or I didn't necessarily like see this person in that way, or was it pretty true to it?
My season was spot on. The edit you got was who you were. I said, oh, yeah, they did that. But now the key thing is, if you wanted to be a little a-hole, they made sure everybody knew you were a little a-hole. And that's what it is. You just got what you got. They can't edit what you don't give them.
Very true.
So don't be a little douchey and you'll be fine.
Yeah. It's and something else I was wondering is, like, this show is called Survivor. Like, what aspects to you were challenging just simply trying to survive in the wilderness? Forget like trying to survive on the show, but, you know, trying to live out there.
Mine was just more so because so let's backtrack. When I was casted for the show, at the same time I was casted, I was in prep for my first Arnold. So I'm in LA. I get the go ahead, like, okay, I get my email comes in, and that's when I found out I was not allowed, accepted for my first Arnold. While I was at Survivor getting casted there in LA. So I'm going through prep, and I said, okay, I think after that Arnold, I had 2 weeks to get ready for the for Survivor. So when I got off stage, my main game plan was to go ahead and eat everything under the sun. Because I said, you're going to need to get something, because you can't go from stage lean and then get over there on the island and go even leaner. I'm going to be a little stick. So I said, okay, let's eat everything we can. So I get there, I ate as much as I could. By the time I got done, I was 26 pounds lighter, not damn near a muscle to be seen. My mom was like, oh, girl, you're so skinny. Are you sick? I said, I just starved for 37 days. So, yeah, that kind of is what it is. But that was more so the more taxing thing, not necessarily the lack of food, because we all compete. You know what it's like to be hungry. You know what it's like to feel like you're starving, even if you're not actually starving. The heat was the main thing. The heat and the dehydration. That was it. But once I got my bearings and I knew, like, all right, how many of these water containers do I need to be drinking a day to make sure I'm not about to fall out this close to the equator? Because that's another level of heat. That's not a Georgia heat. That's not a Florida heat. That was not a Texas heat. That heat was something else. So I said, okay, let me get my bearings. And then I was good to go. Because by the time everything got settled, we were eating more. It was like one big reverse diet. You were eating more and you're doing more, and then you were good to go.
It's amazing that that in and of itself isn't the show, that could literally just be the show. And then you add another aspect of competing onto it. You add an aspect of trying to stay mentally sharp and like understand what's
Yes.
going on around you with yourself, with other people. You got to keep all of, the friendships and the alliances and all this kind of stuff straight. What, as far as like going back, I guess, into the real world, was there anything for you that was like challenging or getting used, because it's not a super long time, but it's long enough to get into a kind of a routine of like watching people differently, acting a little bit more subdued around and making sure people aren't like reading you exactly. Like, was there anything getting back to normal for you?
So for me, the good thing is on the show, I was just me. So whatever I left the same, I came back the same, but I left. So I was good there. The main thing that was different is you get used to waking up when the sun rises and sunsets, listening to the sounds of the ocean. You have no phone. There is literally no contact, but not even with the people who are filming us. So there's no contact except with the people who you're casted with and our producers. So you go back to the real world, you have lights on everywhere, lights, 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 lights. There's sounds everywhere. It's almost sensory overload when you come back in. It's like going from solitary confinement and slapping out into the real world. That is more so an issue in terms of how you sleep. Sleeping in a bed when you're used to sleeping on bamboo, like it's a lot. And so I adapted that pretty quickly. Some of my friends did not. They were going through it for months. Like just even your hormones too. You have to get everything back settled just in terms of not starving anymore, not being as stressed, not being so hyper reactive to every single thing that's said, and so skeptical. And so a lot of people take a second to kind of get their bearings back. Me, I'm skeptical of a lot of people anyway. So like I said, I was just being me.
Getting back into bodybuilding, having the success that you've had in the sport, does it ever become challenging for you to like not get honest feedback, but almost like believe like, or is what I'm hearing around me the truth, or is it like, is it catering to me? Does that ever concern you or to ever think about that?
I don't, because my circle is very, very small. I also never really ask for feedback unless it's somebody who I know knows what they're talking about and is not going to go smoke up my booty hole. Excuse my language. And the main judges. If you're not judging me, your feedback honestly doesn't matter. If you're not my coach, your feedback doesn't matter. So I stick to the judges and my coach. So that narrows down the list of even getting anybody else's input on anything.
Certainly whenever you do certain things, whenever you
Mhm.
achieve certain things,
Yeah.
different people become accessible to you in your life. But because bodybuilding is kind of its own, like you're your own athlete on your own team kind of thing, a lot
Right.
of times, is it ever challenging to have a like a people around you who truly understand like this is what it feels like to achieve these things. This is what I think about because I have like these are my thoughts. This is what I do because of this.
Mhm.
Like, how do you find people who can relate in from the perspective of like achievement and success, I guess is what I'm asking.
That's a hard one. So majority of my friends are competitors. So my parents are competitors, my husband's a competitor. They know what it feels like at a base level. No one will ever know what it feels like to be in my shoes currently, unless it's Linda Murray, Phil Heath, those type of people who've already accomplished it. Other than that, you can't really explain it to anybody else unless they've actually done it. So I don't think in terms of levels of achievement, I've done a lot in my life. And so at a very, very young age, unless somebody's doing exactly what I'm doing, they won't ever be able to understand kind of what I'm doing. They understand me as a person just in terms of how cutthroat, religious, relentless I am, and how I've gotten to where I've gotten. But you can't really understand it unless it's you too.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
And is that
That makes
something
sense.
that you try to to have those conversations, just to like, talking to somebody, like having a mentor who does kind of understand what it's like, so you can, maybe, because part of learning is obviously failing, but another part of it is learning from other people. Do you have those, or try to have those conversations with people that you've just mentioned, or similar people?
Well, my friend group, they're extremely supportive. They get everything. In terms of my mentors, Lee Haney and Linda Murray are who I talk to about different things if there's ever any issues that pop up. But Lee Haney's been, and him and his daughter and I went to preschool together. But we've been friends and family for a very, very long time. So if anything in terms of guidance of how to build my career, how to build me as a person, Lee has really instilled how I move throughout this industry to this day. And then, so that's, he's very, very crucial in terms of that, just in terms of making sure that bodybuilding is not my end all be all. He preached that to me before I even got my pro card. He's like, so this ain't it. This is not it. You need to be doing A, B, C, and D. And so I took that advice and I ran with it. But other than that, there's not too many people. Because the thing is, I beat to my own drum. So anything I do, I'm going to do it my way, how I want to do it. If I choose to reach out, I'll reach out to select people. But ultimately, I know I'm paving my own way and doing it for me, how I want it to be done for me. So there's nobody who can tell me how to do it for me, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And, it's kind of like when people say, I want to be the next this, but in
Right.
reality, what they want to be is they want to be successful, but they want to be
Correct.
themselves, or at least that's kind
Correct.
of what the goal should be.
That's right. Same. Yep.
You mentioned like you're competitive, and obviously having success like you do, you work hard, you push hard, you challenge yourself. But what do you feel like you're expressing, when it's that last two reps of a set that just are down at the bottom of your soul, or you're in prep and it's that last week and it's so hard? Like, what do you feel like you're expressing? Is it like this? Is it a want to get an emotion out? Like, what is truly, like, I guess, pushing you, and what are you expressing when you're digging that deep?
For this prep, I had one of my closest friends. He's like a father figure to me. He passed in August. So for this prep, I usually pull on those people who believe in me and have believed in me the most and have made sure that have put me in the place to be where I am today. Because at the end of the day, you've had people believe in you. If you're giving any less than 150% effort, that's disrespectful. And I'm very big on respecting those who respected me and poured into me, and I pour that back whether they're on this earth or not. So for me, anytime it was like, oh, getting a little rocky. Granted, this prep was really, really amazing, but anytime I was like, oh, maybe a little bit tired, I pulled on, I would say my friend's name. I was like, all right, he said, this is what I got to do. And we do it. And next thing you know, the workout was amazing. So I pull on things like that. I pull on my family. I pull on my friends, and I pull on what I'm trying to accomplish. And if I'm continually trying to make world history, you got to dig deep and you have to really focus on what that goal is. And so every time, even with those tragedies that happen around prep, that can always happen for a lot of different people because it's life. You're still living life. You're in your little zone, but at the end of the day, life is still happening around you. And so I choose to focus on, yes, take from the outside, but also focus that what on that goal, and remember what that goal is, and push towards that goal and do whatever you need to do to get there.
And how is, you mentioned that this prep specifically, but how has your Olympia prep evolved, and how has that Olympia experience evolved as well? Because the first time you do something, it's different than the fifth or sixth time you do something.
Right. It's almost like, well, I always tell my athletes, when I have my closing clients, I had about 7 people on stage with me, 7 of my clients on stage with me. And what I would tell them is treat it as another day. So that's what I do. It's literally just another day. You're going on practicing. You just might be glammed up this day. You might just be a little bit more excited, more filled up. But at the end of the day, treat it like another day. So that's personally what I do. The first one, my first Olympia, I'm talking about, I was so nervous. I was shaking like a leaf. Okay, it was bad. And all you could feel was the cortisol just like go over my entire body, and it's a heat wave. And I said, never again. But literally, I was like another person from the second I woke up to the second I was about to walk through that, my first one. As you've gotten through it, that was my 9th Olympia, this past one. Now it's very much just comfortable. You're used to being there. It's not, it's still special, but it's not as nerve wracking. It's not as anxiety provoking as it was in the past because I've gotten more stable and more consistent in what I'm able to do and what I know I'm bringing. That consistency and that drive and that determination in what the prep was makes me more comfortable going in. And that's where you get that calmness as you're going on to stage. If you know you're underprepared or if you're worried if you're prepared or not, that's when you get that anxiety and those nerves. Like, yes, I'm still a little bit nervous every time I walk on stage, but I know what I'm bringing and I'm more excited than nervous. So that has changed a lot from the first year to the ninth.
Yeah. And so, that first one, I guess, especially it's the first time you're doing it. Were the nerves then more like, what's this experience gonna be like?
Yes, it was very much just like, wow, I actually made it. It's like, oh, I always say, like when I was looking, I think went to my first, it was in NPC Georgia, and there was this big old swole guy there, and I saw him, he had a jacket on and had an O on it. My ignorant self, I was like, oh, I want that jacket. Not realizing it was an Olympia jacket. So all these things just piece together as I'm starting to live my life. I'm like, oh, I said I wanted to go to Olympia. That's what I'm gonna do. So when you actually make it happen, it's like, ooh, wow, I'm actually here. So that's what that moment was. It was just like, I actually did that.
And then moving forward, like into the next one and the next one, does it become more, especially as you do start to win, does it become more, or do you feel like it's a pressure, a nervousness because of maybe like a pressure to continue to be who you think you are and who, your family sees you as? Like, is that maybe what the pressure or the nervousness is now?
Now, let me think. First one was what it was. Two, I was kind of winging it. So I was kind of cool. That's when I had my first coach. I was like, all right, let's see what happens. And that's when I got, I think, eighth that year. But no, I had my coach on my third one. So third one was pretty calm because that was the first time I had somebody who was just, I didn't have to think about anything. He just did everything and we just kind of rolled with it. By the time I had my first win, I didn't feel pressure that time either because I was still the underdog. There's a lot less pressure when you're trying to get something versus when you have it and you're trying to keep it. So that one was really, really fun. After that point, that's when I started putting more pressure on myself, specifically for that second one. The second one was it was just so much going on. I was finishing my master's degree. I'd already exited my program, and it was just, I had moved across the country. It was a lot going on. I was like, Lord, please just get me through this. I was hoping and wishing every day, hoping and wishing I just make it through. But that one's more so the pressure of making sure that it wasn't just a one-time thing. Like, you deserve this title. You deserve to be here. You need to make it happen. So that's the pressure comes from the second win. After the third one was the first time I started feeling a sense of calmness. It's like, all right, I already got two. Third one, let's start having a little bit more fun. Let's take a little bit of the pressure off, keep the pressure on, but kind of find that happy medium where it's not anxiety provoking and it's pressure, but it's comfortable pressure, which it kind of is an oxymoron. But those who get it will get that. It's like a certain piece where you got to put that pressure on, but it's not to the point where it becomes negative return. And then after that one, I haven't felt pressure since then. I put my foot on the gas and I keep it there. So it's every experience after the third one has just been pretty amazing and just and calm.
Yeah. Yeah, with the Olympia being back in Vegas this year, certainly calm is a tough one to use adjective wise. But how does the Olympia event, the weekend in and of itself, like how do you take that in at the same time of like keeping your mind on, your eye on the prize, I guess?
So that's interesting. That's when it's a benefit of not being the reigning champion because everybody else gets to go sit down and relax. That entire weekend from the second I touch down is work all the way through the end of the Superstar Seminar on Sunday. While everybody else has to go and relax, I have to be at the press conference. I have to have an extremely long line of my meet and greet, which is fortunate. I love to see my fans and everything, but that is for an introverted person that pulls a lot of my energy. It pulls a lot, and so I have to stay as focused as I can. And the good thing is, though it pulls a lot of my energy, it gives me a lot back because the people who show up in your line, and when you see the same people every single year, that's inspiring to me. And that's motivating to me that say, hey, they're flying out here to see me. Let me go give them the show that they flew out here to see. So though it pulls, it gives back at the same time. But as an introvert, you have to learn how to navigate that amount of extrovertedness and make sure it doesn't pull from your stamina that you need for the stage. So from there, you have your meet and greet, then you have the show, then you have photo shoots, then you have your sponsors, then you have the seminar. There's just a lot that happens throughout that weekend. So for me, that's where experience comes in. After you've done it so many times, you get used to it. Though this year was by far the craziest. Woo, Lord, it was by far. It was a lot. It was a lot happening. You just keep everything as calm as you can, and just make sure that you still are ready to rock and roll for Friday.
As you're talking about that, it gets me thinking, like, if you could go back and reset and restart, would you take that opportunity to go back to the beginning? Not necessarily, 14, but let's just say getting your pro card, you're at that point, and restart it all. Is the journey, when you look back, is the journey as special as the outcome or the outcomes, I guess?
I think the journey is more special. The amount of mental fortitude, stamina, tenacity, relentlessness that I've been able to display and learn and build throughout these last 17, 18 years, I wouldn't change it for the world. It happened exactly how it needed to happen, when it needed to happen, and it worked out and got me to where I am today.
Going through that kind of journey and doing the things that you've done and kind of building on experiences, I think that's such a cool part of bodybuilding. It's like you can choose how you do it. Like,
That's
the
right.
sport is the sport, but you can choose, like, oh, I want to train this way. I want to eat
That's
this
right.
way. I want to, and all those things they're not just like things that you say you're doing, but they're choices that you're making. And
Correct.
I think in today's day and age, it's weird to say because we have a lot of choices, but at the same time, we don't have that much control over our destiny in a lot of areas. But
That's
when you
right.
can strictly take control of your life and say, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, it's such an underrated sport.
Yep, and that's the key thing is all of those are journey based. So if you take all of that, nix out the subjectivity of the judging, nix that out. Focus on the journey, and that's what builds you as a person. That's when you build all those key things you just listed, and that's what the benefit is of just being able to say, hey, in this world full of chaos, you have this one thing you can control, which is what you put in your mouth and what you allow into your body. And that for me is the really selling the main selling point, because I'm a low-key control freak. I don't know if you can tell. Type A all day. But that's what I love the most, is that when everything else is going wrong, I know for a fact I'm gonna eat this meal at this time. I mean, this meal at this time. I'm gonna be in the gym. I'm doing this at this time. It allows me to get my power back. And for those who have little issues with anxiety, with trying to ground themselves, you ground yourselves in the things you do daily. And I think that's what the main takeaway, and one thing that can be really, really helpful for mental health and anybody who has a little bit different issues with that. This sport is for those people. You get your power back. You're able to be grounded. You're able to focus on each single detail to make you a better person. And ultimately, that's huge for me.
People, just in general, they might make the argument kind of, they'll use the same thing you just said, but say these people who do bodybuilding, they're a slave to it. They get something they have to do because they have whatever issue. But it's so interesting to hear you counter that with, it gives you the power back. You take control of your life. And I think it just depends how you look at it.
That's right.
Some people are always going to, down you for doing whatever it is you do. It doesn't matter if it's making you a better person or not. But I think it's so important to be the kind of person that looks at a situation from how is this good? How is this, be realistic, because some things aren't good and some things aren't for people, but what is this doing for people? How, there's too many people I've talked to on the podcast from, the most successful people in the sport like yourself, to people who are just getting into it, to everybody in between. And there's not been one person who's been like, overall bodybuilding has been a negative
Right.
experience. So
Right.
it's just, there's too many people talking to me saying it's overall positive, that the stuff that sometimes you see online about, these people wouldn't do it if they didn't, feel like they had to do it, blah, 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 blah.
Right. I have plenty of other things I could be doing right now. I choose this sport because I love it. That's the only reason I'm still in it for 18 years. It's done nothing but be positive for me. For those who make it negative, chances are you are already a negative person, and you need to sit with that first. Sit with that, understand that, embrace that, and decide whether you want to change that or not.
What does it feel like for you, because you have been in the sport so long, and being especially on the Olympia stage and seeing people go in,
Yeah.
seeing, I guess older athletes kind of moving out, new athletes coming in, and just, that kind of whole experience. Like, what is that like for you to be amongst the shift, but still be kind of where you are?
It's been pretty cool. I would say it's wild to see just a turnover and to be like, oh, this person was standing next to me just 5 years ago, which in grand scheme of things isn't really that much time. But it seems to be like every 3 to 4, 5 years, we're getting a shift. And to still be where I'm at, it shows me that I'm doing everything that I need to do, and I'm doing it as I need to do it, the way that I want it to be done, and it's being rewarded. And so I think that's a good thing for a lot of the athletes that I have that follow me, to pick your path, decide how you want to prep, decide the life you want to live, and you ride that wave no matter how it's judged. I just have the benefit of them liking the decisions I've made for myself, and my coach backing me in the decisions I made for myself, which has been cool to see that I'm able to still keep hanging, still keep swinging with no matter who shows up next. I'm still gonna be here and ready to rock and roll and keep bringing what I bring to the stage.
And, obviously you've been in the sport a long time, but only being 30 years old is not, old in this sport, especially anymore.
Yeah.
What kind of goals, like looking into the future, what kind of goals do you have as far as competition and things like that?
I want to go as far as I can consecutively. Then at a certain point, it's going to be reality. It's going to hit. I got to pop the baby out because my husband and I want to have kids and everything. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll decide from that point forward whether or not I come back, or if I move on to a lot of the other ventures that I postpone because they do not go with competing. There's only so far you can push it. When like track and bodybuilding, you can push it a little bit. But at a certain point, if I have to worry about my diet, there's certain things that just cannot be done. Yeah. So it's like, okay, if I have to be on set or something for 12 hours and you're not eating in that 12 hours, that doesn't work. Somebody's gonna need to feed me. So I don't do intermittent fasting. So I'm like, I need to eat. So with things like that, that's going to be kind of just crucial as these next years. I talk over my husband, talk it over my family, just see if I'm ready to hang it up. If I'm ready to hang it up, then I'll move on. If I'm not, I'll just keep going until I am.
You see very, very successful athletes in sport be like, when do I do that? Like, it's hard. Is it when I'm on top? Because then at some point you got to think like, oh, maybe next year I could do the same, or, have the reality of like one more year, and then next year you're not as good, and the next year you think, okay, well, that was a fluke, and the next year you're not as good as you were the year before. So it's so hard to make that decision of like, when is that time?
I think it's gonna be what the beautiful thing is, if you do this sport what I consider right, in terms of building yourself, building your brands, building your businesses, and doing everything you need to do while you're at a certain place in the sport, the sport carries with you for the rest of your life. So that's your longevity in the sport. But if you choose not to take care of yourself or take full stock in what this sport can do for you and your life and your family, that's a decision that's on you, and you sit with that. But for me, it's gonna solely be a decision, not necessarily on my body. I think I have a good bit of years. My preps are extremely healthy. Like, my preps are amazing. So I think I can go for a longer period of time. It's a matter of mentally what I want to do next and what time limit I have on those things. Because bodybuilding for me, if I know I still have more time, I'll just come back 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So when I take my I'm gonna call it a break. I will never say I retired till I know for sure I am retired. I'm not gonna be that person who retires and comes back. We're not doing that. When I say I retired, that means I'm done. You will not see me on the stage again unless I'm handing out a trophy or I'm doing some judging or something like that. Other than that, but it's gonna be interesting to see. We have at least a few more years to go, so it's gonna be interesting to kind of start focusing in on that conversation with myself and just seeing where I'm at with it, seeing what I feel like. And I also talk to my coach too, because we're two peas in the pod. So whatever decision he thinks is best is what we're gonna go with. I will say it's been a blessing.
What kind of advice would you have for girls or for women getting into the sport of bodybuilding who want to be, hopefully someday, everybody wants to win in your shoes and, not to be the next you, but to be as successful, as you are?
The key takeaway and the one thing I live by is focus on yourself. Don't compare yourself to anybody on Instagram, anybody in real life, anybody sitting next to you on stage. At the end of the day, they don't matter. When you get on that stage, you're looking at the judges. You're not looking side to side. You're looking at the judges. And that's the only person you need to focus on, making sure that you're really showing out for them and nobody else.
That's true in bodybuilding. That's true in the rest of life. It doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. They're at a different point. You're at a different point. You have different potential. You have different skills. It's just maximize what you can do. And it doesn't really matter what this person's doing, because you can do that or you can do more. So it's up to you. I think that's great advice.
That's right.
I really appreciate you coming on. It was really great to get to meet you. I'm really grateful for your time today. It's just it's been an honor to chat with you.
Nice talking to you too.